What's up, everybody? Welcome to New Commander Friday. Yeah, I've got Olivia built for you. I want to get a new commander deck out, and I was thinking the other day I haven't built anything tribal in a really long time. I think my last tribal deck was Grinzo, and so I was kind of looking around for a tribal deck to build. And with Olivia being in Modern Masters 17, I was like, okay, let's give Olivia a shot. So here we are. We've got a nice little, pretty straightforward black-red vampires deck, and been a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed it. I can see why she's one of the more popular Rakdos commanders. She's a lot of fun, but let's start off with Olivia herself. So, we're playing Olivia Voldaren. She has flying. For 2 mana, she deals 1 damage to another target creature. That creature becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Then put a +1 counter on Olivia. For her second activated ability of 5 mana, gain control of target vampire for as long as you control Olivia. So the cool thing with this is kind of where flavor and mechanics meet in this like beautiful little harmony. So she's going to deal 1 damage to target creature. It's going to become a vampire in addition to its other creature types. Then for 5 mana, you can gain control of target vampire. So basically you can kind of blast your opponent's creatures, make them a vampire. She gets a +1 counter. Then after she's quote unquote bit them by dealing that 1 damage, you can kind of like bring your little vampire army over to your side. So she's really fun in that you can just gain control of your opponent's creatures and kind of make them a little vampire, give them a nice little vampire bonus through. We have some vampire lords in here, so it's always cool kind of having like an unofficial vampire on your team. So, but yeah, that's Olivia in a nutshell. I've definitely enjoyed the deck. It's a lot of fun. But let's jump into the actual deck tech itself. So I've got it broken down. Since this is a tribal deck, I've kind of got it broken down by the vampire creature parts of the deck. So let's start off with the aristocrat build of the deck. Yeah, man. Vampires. That's aristocrats. I was really happy. So we have Indulgent Aristocrat. He has lifelink. For 2 colorless, sacrifice a creature. Put a +1 counter on each vampire you control. Now, he doesn't have a free sacrifice outlet in which you're looking for in an aristocrat build, but for 2 mana, sacrifice a creature. Put a +1 counter on each vampire you control. It's kind of like a poor man's way to sacrifice a creature, get those Blood Artist triggers going, but at the same time, putting a +1 counter on each vampire that we control, it's really good. It may get into spots where, let's say we have a bunch of flying vampires, and we just need to get a few more counters on it to kind of push it through, and we can kind of close the game out. So definitely nice to have. And that lifelink, if we can get a nice little bonus, a few vampire lords out there, then that lifelink will kind of add up in our games as we progress. On to the next aristocrat creature that we're running is Viscera Cyr. He is a vampire, and he has a free sacrifice outlet. Now this is very important. Basically, let's say that our opponent's at 10 life, we have 10 creatures out there, or we actually have 11 creatures and a Blood Artist. We can start sacrificing our creatures and make them lose 1 life. Now with the Indulgent Aristocrat, we're going to have to pay 2 mana for each creature that we're going to sacrifice. But with Viscera Cyr, it's a free sacrifice, so we can even sacrifice Viscera Cyr to its own ability. So it's really good to run something like that that has a free sack outlet. Onto the Blood Artist effects in Blood Artist himself. Yeah, man. He's a vampire too. It's fun to get Blood Art. I'm used to Blood Artists just sitting back and just hanging back and waiting until we get enough creatures to start sacrificing them. So between the vampire lords and there's also vampires that put +1 counters on the other vampires, I think I got into spots where I was swinging in with like a 3/4 Blood Artist and it felt pretty good, man. So, but yeah, if you're not familiar, whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So pretty simple, just looking to get into spots where we can get those nice little taxing effects up and running. We're also running Falconwrath Noble. So he has flying. It's a 2/2 body. Whenever Falconwrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Basically, it's just like Blood Artist, except it has flying and it's a 2/2 body. And that does matter late game, especially when we get some of those Vampire Lords out. The next kind of aristocrat thing that we're running is Malakir Blood Witch. It has flying, protection from white. Whenever it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to the number of vampires you control. So let's say that we've hit our mana curve. We're sitting at about 4 or 5. I keep wanting to say zombies instead of vampires. Let's say we have 4 or 5 vampires out there, and we get the Blood Witch down. They're going to lose 5. We gain 5. That may be just enough to push us into an area to where we can start sacrificing creatures with Blood Artists out there and kind of get the win that way, or by pushing through in the air. It does have flying, which is really important, and protection from white, which is nice to play against. So. And then as a non-creature spell to keep with the aristocrat, we're running Blood Tribute. So it has a kicker cost of tap target untapped vampire you control. Then target player loses half of his or her life rounded up. If Blood Tribute was kicked, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. So if you haven't noticed, the most recent Magic Online update, they changed the rules in Dual Commander 1 versus 1 to 30 life instead of 40 life. So something like this Blood Tribute, it may be a little bit expensive, but it's kind of something that if Dual Commander is going to stick at 30 life online, some of my decks may have to change around or maybe just add a little bit of life gain to it. So something like this Blood Tribute is a good way for us to kind of get our opponent's life total down and gain some life to maybe get ahead on any damage that we've taken. So that covers the aristocrat vampires of the deck. Let's go to the lords of the deck. So we're running Strom Kurt Captain. Look at my mouse. There we go. So it has first strike, and then other vampire creatures you can control get +1/+1 and have first strike. So really good commander card, really good creature card in the deck, and it's just really solid. I mean, giving them all first strike and +1/+1 is just really good to have. The main thing to note is it gives other vampires +1/+1, and he has first strike himself, so he's not going to get that bonus from it, but he's going to give everybody else the bonus. On to the next lord. We're running Captivating Vampire, so this one actually kind of pulls two jobs in one. So other vampire creatures we control are going to get +1/+1. Then we can tap 5 untapped vampires we control, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. So basically, if we have a nice little board state developed with a bunch of creatures out there, we can start tapping our vampires, gaining control of them, and then they turn into a vampire, which is going to get any effects from the lords that we have out there. So really good card in the deck. Also playing Vampire Nocturnus. Man, I won a lot of games with him, and he is just a solid. You know, it's a little hard to get the black card on top sometimes. You don't get that bonus, but when you have a black card on top, it is just a really nice pump effect. So let's start off with him. So play with the top card of your library. Play with the top card of your library revealed. As long as the top card of your library is black, Vampire Nocturnus and other vampire creatures you control get +2/+1 and have flying. That's really important because we do have some vampires that don't have flying, so that +2/+1 and that flying ability will give you just enough of a push to kind of close it out in the air. Let's say that their opponent has some ground creatures and not all your creatures have flying. You get this guy down. All of a sudden all your vampires have flying. You can push into the air for 20 points of damage instead of just like maybe 5 points of damage. So really good. Usually this is pretty much one of the number one tutor targets that we're going for if we're going for a lord. On to the next one. We're playing Bloodlord of Vasgoth. It has Bloodthirst 3, so basically if an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 3/+1 counters on it. He has flying, and he also says whenever you cast a vampire spell, it gains Bloodthirst 3. So it's going to reward us for swinging in with a flying creature, and at the same time, it's going to give those 3 extra counters to creatures that come in. So. And we're also running the Liege. He's not a vampire, but it's just black creatures, red creatures get +1/+1, and then whenever he becomes a spell of a target of a spell or ability, target player loses 4 life. So it's kind of a way for us to just pump all of our vampires across the board, get that bonus. We're running, I think like 1, 2, we're running like 3 or 4 or 5, and including Olivia, multicolored vampire. So this is just going to be a really nice bonus, especially if we have Olivia out there. So I went ahead and included him in the vampire. He's an unofficial vampire, even though it's an elemental knight. And the funny thing about it is we can't blast it with Olivia to make it a vampire. So, but yeah, pretty good little lord. So we've covered the aristocrats, lords. Let's go to the removal vampires. We've got Guldraz Assassin. This is a level up creature. It costs 1 mana. For the first level up ability, stays a 1/1. Once we get into the 2 range on leveling it up, we can pay 1 black mana and target creature gets -2/-2. Once we get it to the level 4 range, 1 black mana, target creature gets -4/-4. It's a little bit of a mana sink, but it's nice to have late game. Let's say that we don't have a whole lot going on. We can just start pumping our mana into leveling our assassin up. The next one that we're running is Dark Imposter. Really fun card. I did not get to cast it during my videos, but I built an assassin deck a long time ago, and it was assassin tribal, and Dark Imposter was a very focal point of the deck, and so I've excelled a few creatures there. It's always fun doing that. But yeah, so the activated ability is at 6 mana. A little pricey on that, but like I said, if it's late game and we don't have much going on, it's good to have her on the battlefield. So for 6 mana, exile target creature, put a +1 counter on Dark Imposter. Then Dark Imposter has all activated abilities of all creatures exiled with it. You know, very situational, but you know, having those activated abilities is pretty nice. Let's say you gain control of something or exile something. It's pretty cool. And if you think about it, so Dark Imposter, look at the card art. So you can see the body in the background, and you can see Dark Imposter like it just took the costume and it's running up. So I've always enjoyed the card on it. Very solid card. Next one we're running is Anawan the Rune Sage. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature. Now we are running maybe like 4 or 5 or 6 non-vampire creatures, but he's just such a good card that we're going to run it in there anyway, and most of the time we're going to get our opponent to start sacrificing some creatures. Let's say we have Yahini out there and they sacrifice a creature, that's going to be a +1 counter on Yahini. If we have any vampire lords out there, it's just a nice utility card to have in here. So, after the removal vampires, we have utility vampires. We're running Vampire Hex Mage. First strike, sacrifice it, remove all counters from target permanent. Really good way for us to deal with Planeswalkers. We do have Dreadbore in the deck, but it's another way for us to deal with Planeswalkers. On to the next one, running Bloodline Keeper. Solid card in the deck, man. Like, I run Bloodline Keeper in almost any black commander deck that I can run just because it's just so much value. It's a 4-drop, 3/3 flyer. Once you get a spot to where you can tap it, you can create a 2/2 black vampire token. Then, once you have 5 vampires, which is not that crazy to get 5 vampires out in a vampire tribal deck, black mana, transform it, activate it only if you control 5 or more vampires. It has flying, other vampire creatures you control get +2/+2, and you can still keep making those tokens. So, this is one of those cards that is good enough to go in almost any commander deck that's running black, but especially in an Olivia tribal deck, really good, really solid card. This is also a very solid tutor line to take. We're also running Kalitas. It has lifelink. If another non-token creature in opponent control dies, exile it instead, and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Then activated ability of 3, sacrifice another vampire or zombie, put 2/+1 counters on Kalitas. So let's say we need to gain some life. We can just kind of start sacrificing some of our vampires, put those counters on Kalitas, and swing in and gain that life. Just a good utility vampire. We're also running Falcon Wrath Aristocrat. It has Flying Haste, and it has a free sack outlet. Sacrifice a creature. So let's say we need to get into a spot where we have to sacrifice, Falcon Wrath to herself to get an extra Blood Artist trigger. We can. And then whenever you sacrifice her, she gains indestructible until end of turn. If the sacrificed creature was a human, put a +1 counter on there. Magic Crystal Land, let's say we gain control of a human with Olivia, and then we can get that +1 counter. But I don't think we're running any humans in here. We might be. That I might be missing, but oh yeah, we've got Zulaport. Zulaport's a human, so you can sacrifice Zulaport to give it a +1 counter if you need to. And then the next utility vampire we're running is Skeletal Vampire. Man, this is just a fun card. At 6 mana, it is flying. Whenever it enters the battlefield, create 2/1/1 black bat tokens with flying. Then for 5 mana, sacrifice a bat, create 2/1/1 black creature tokens with flying. Then it has an activated ability, sacrifice a bat, regenerate it. So basically, it's going to come in with 2, pay 5 mana, sack 1, you're going to get 2 more, so now you have 3 bats. Then next turn you can pay 1, you go to 2, you get 4 bats. So basically each turn for each 5 mana you can keep making those little bat tokens. I never got Skeletal Vampire down, but it's just I was like looking through vampires to put in there, and I was like, hey, come on, get in the deck, man. We're going to have some fun. Yeah, you get to make some bat tokens. That's always fun. So that's the utility vampires. Let's go to the counter vampires. Yeah, there's a very strong counter theme in like the vampire tribe. So we're running Rakish Air. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1 counter on it. This is a really good card in that we can just get it down. Let's say our opponent has a bunch of creatures on the ground, we can't push through, but we have some flying vampires. So this doesn't care if it's them or a flying vampire. Once a vampire you control deals combat damage, put a +1 counter on it. So it's a good way to get it down, and we're swinging the air, get those counters on it. We're also running Drana. Drana is really good in this deck. She is flying in first strike. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, put a +1 counter on each attacking creature that you control. So the cool thing about Drana is, let's say that we're swinging, and she's going to have first strike. So that first strike damage is going to go on the stack first. She's going to attack first. First strike damage gets dealt first. So her second ability of putting +1 counter on each attacking creature you control is going to put a +1 counter on each attacking creature that hasn't dealt damage yet, that doesn't have first strike damage. So it's a really good way to get her to swing in and then get a bunch of +1 counters on your already attacking creatures. Just get that nice little bonus. We're also running Guldraz Overseer. Overseer. It has flying. It doesn't have counters, but basically the landfall kind of fits on theme with it. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, other creatures you control get +1 until end of turn. If it was a swamp, those creatures get +2 until end of turn. This is one of those. It's a little expensive, but it's just value. Like I said, let's say it's late game. We don't have a lot of card draw going. She's already down. We can turn our swamp into a +2, +0 for all of our creatures instead of it just being a normal land drop. So it's not the most exciting utility vampire, but it's good to have in the deck. The next one we're running is Thief of Blood. So it has flying. Whenever Thief of Blood enters the battlefield, remove all counters from all permanents with a +1 counter on it. As Thief of Blood enters the battlefield, remove all counters from all permanents. Thief of Blood enters the battlefield with a +1 counter on it for each counter removed this way. So basically, let's say there's a Planeswalker out there that's a 10/10. She's going to come in with 10 +1 counters on it, kind of steal everything away. Now, it will take away from all permanents, so it's going to include our vampires if they have any +1 counters on it. But it's kind of a nice way to, let's say you're playing against Super Friends, you can get down Thief of Blood and end up with a nice little like 20/20 or something like that if your opponent's kind of having some fun. On to the next one, we're playing Necropolis Reagent. She has flying. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1 counters on it. A really good card. This is a really good finisher. You know, it's not the most exciting finisher, but if we're swinging in for with a 3/3, we're going to get 3 counters on each that vampire that just dealt 3 damage, and put it on her, and we're going to go to 12/11 right there. So it's a really good card to get down, especially if you can protect it, get some lightning greaves on there. So that covers our counter vampires. Let's go over to our utility creatures. Okay, so we're running Crypt Gas, just a quick way for us to get into some quick mana, nothing too crazy with that. Whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add black to your mana pool. We're also running Anger. We have some sack outlets so we can sacrifice it, get into the graveyard, and the creatures we control have haste. We're also running Balthor, man. It's so nice to have a deck for Balthor where his like full ability can be used. Minion creatures get +1/+1. We don't have any minions, but for 3 mana, exile Balthor. Each player returns all black and red creature cards from his or her graveyard to the battlefield. So we're running a Rakdos black-red deck. Let's say we get board wiped, we get Balthor out, bring everybody out, and then we can rinse and repeat. So really good card in the deck. We're also running Mogus, God of Slaughter. It's just a really good card. It has Indestructible. We're going to get Devotion on really quick because we're looking to get down a vampire every single turn. And then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that 2 damage is really going to add up unless they start sacrificing creatures, so which will clear the board for us. On the next one, we're running Carnage Gladiator. This is one of my pet cards. I have not had a place for it in basically any commander deck, and I've always loved Carnage Gladiator. So basically, whenever a creature blocks, that creature's controller loses 1 life. This way, it's for us to kind of swing in with the whole vampire board state, and if they start blocking, let's say they block 5 of our vampires, it's going to be 5 damage that gets dealt. To be honest, man, I love Carnage Gladiator. I needed a home for him. If you watch some of the gameplay videos, you'll see him down in the left-hand corner too, so I figured I'd make him the art instead of Olivia on the overlay. But yeah, I just wanted to find a home for Carnage Gladiator, and you know, there might be a game where we kind of close it out with his block ability. Who knows? But yeah, I got a home for you, buddy. I have little pet cards sometimes that I kind of have off to the side. I was like, I need to work this into a deck somewhere. Carnage Gladiator is one of those, so I can cross that off my list. Running the Whispering, once again, this is just value. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. Pretty simple. We're also running the Merciless. So whenever an opponent casts a spell, he deals damage equal to target creature or player deals damage to target creature or player equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Once again, this is just kind of a finisher for us. We're hoping to kind of swing in with some flying creatures to get their life total down, and when they start casting stuff late game, we can start dealing that damage over there. So that's the utility creatures, and let's go over to the fun spells. Well, this is not that much of a fun spell, but it's kind of more keeping on line with the vampires. But whenever a creature dies, put a +1 counter on equip creature. If it's a vampire, put 2 counters on it instead. Really good card. Get it down for 1, equip for 1, and it's just a really good utility card. We're also running the Masquerade. Attacking creatures you control have first strike, which is really good. And then whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1 counter on it. So 3 mana, get it down. We have all of our flying creatures, get those counters on there. And then, alright, on to the fun cards. We're running Wound Reflection. 6 mana, a little pricey, but it's pretty good. I close the game out with it. At the beginning of each instep, each opponent loses life equal to the life he or she lost this turn. So pretty good. It's a way where you can swing in. Let's say you swing in for 10 in the air, get this down on your second main phase, and they're going to lose 10 damage. So it kind of amplifies your creatures out. I mean, your damage that you're dealing during combat. And you can also do, let's say your opponent has mana tapped up, you swing in, they do some stuff during combat, and they're tapped out or something, you get down Wound Reflection and kind of get that, double that mana up. We're also running Breath of Fury, so pretty fun. I didn't get to cast it, but I wanted to. Enchant creature you control. Whenever enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it and attach Breath of Fury to a creature you control. If you do, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So basically, you put it on a creature, once you deal combat damage, sacrifice it, put it on another creature. It's like it keeps going down the line. So let's say that they don't have any flyers in the air. We got 4 or 5. It could be in a spot where that may be just enough damage to kind of close it out. And it's yeah, I was looking it up when I was building Olivia, and it just looked like a really fun card to play. And I'm running Mindcrank and Blood Chief Ascension. So if you're not familiar, Blood Chief Ascension, at the beginning of each instep, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Blood Chief. Then whenever a card is put in an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, and it has 3 counters on it, target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Mindcrank says whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into the graveyard. So basically what's going to happen is it's going to create a loop. Cards are going to hit the graveyard, they're going to lose the life. When they lose the life, they're going to put a card in the graveyard, and it's just going to loop like that until one of 2 things happen. Either A, they run out of life, or B, they run out of cards. And so as I was building this deck, I found myself that there's sometimes, like, if we draw into Blood Chief Ascension and, like, we're just stuck in this, like, miserable, like, Winter Ore block, or we're playing against Super Friends or something, we need something to kind of close the game out quick, I went ahead and threw it in there. So I normally don't play combo. The main thing that we're trying to do with this deck is go beat downs with vampires, but it's there. We're running a lot of tutors, and it was just good to have it. And plus, the Blood Chief Ascension is just a really good card. If you can get it online, and then they just start cracking fetches, they cast Brainstorms, they cast Factor Fictions, turning any card that hits the graveyard into 2 life, and you gaining 2 life is a pretty good value to run in there. So it's kind of a little bit of a no-brainer to run Mindcrank alongside it. But yeah, so we covered Olivia, the Aristocrat Vampire, Lord Vampires, Removal Vampires, Utility Vampires, Counter Vampires, Utility Creatures, and Fun Spells. That is everything. Guys, that's the deck tech. I have 3 gameplay videos for you. Check it out. Pretty fun. I win interestingly, and I have 2 interesting wins, and then I think in one of the videos I probably could have won, but I just missed it, and I was a little bit of on a time crunch this week. Otherwise, I would have recorded that other video. But all right, guys, have fun and enjoy watching them. Have a good weekend. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe. Thanks.